because we do, adapt to, those changes. We figure out what's working now and what isn't working now. We really don't care. Because we do, I mean, it's the same. I think, Kyle, when was your first test with SIA, your first published one? What year was that?
2015, I think.
Okay, so, those very first tests, does keyword in an H1 work? Pretty sure that's in POP, actually.
Yeah, it's still there.
It's still there. It still works, so.
Still there. Still works. Still good. And, the POP team, we test that still. Like we run a little test just to double check, that nothing significant has changed in that. So then when we're giving that type of advice, then we know we're pretty good. The only thing that's gotten a little more technical, a lot more technical, is understanding concepts like the standard error of the mean, and being able to create a range that is within a statistically significant p-value. That's actually, so like that's baked into POP now, so that the advice that we give, and then when we check it again, so that we can see that the range that we're offering is statistically significant, and not just to 95%, but I think we hit around 98% on statistical significance in terms of the recommendations that we're giving. So I mean, yeah,
right.
So we kind of take it like we've just gotten more mathy, but the actual factor itself is still the same.
Yep, same as it was back in 2015 and before.
Yeah.
Well, thank you everyone for joining us for another episode of SEO Fight Club. We're just going to have a Q&A day here, so if you have any questions, let us know in the Zoom chat or in the YouTube chat. We're watching both. Otherwise, we're just kind of going to talk about SEO until you guys have questions. So, Kyle, what's new with POP? What's on the roadmap there?
We've actually, it's actually been kind of funny. We've I don't know that we've actually had a major feature launch since November, but it's all been behind the scenes coding stuff that we've been working on to make things a little bit faster. And then people caught the tail end of what I was just talking about. We work on the math a lot. The whole goal is to be effective, and done a lot of work with the back end math and how that goes, and then small UX UI updates that people probably aren't even really cognizant of, that we can see that make things better. That's been a lot of what we've been working on. We've got a reporting feature in the mix. That's going to be the biggest feature update that's coming sooner rather than later, and then updates to our extension to work with more editors and stuff like that. That's where we're at.
Nice. So Clint, saw you just hopped on. What's new with SEO this week?
We just talked a little bit about Google Maps and some of the news that's surrounding Google Maps and some of the things that are going on with it that the mainstream SEO community is finally caught on to. I don't know why it took them so long, but talk about that. We answer a lot of questions and some ideas on how to rank maps, etc.
Nice. And how's the Schema software coming?
That's good. The drop and drag feature is working now. We have 20 of the templates with that built in already. It's just the way we had to code it that way. So, but we push those live, so you can do like organization, local business, all the mainstream stuff is already there, and you can use the drop and drag features.
And if people want to learn about your Schema software, where can they go?
Rankgear.com.
So check that out. And Carolyn, I hear you are setting up an episode of SEO Fight Club. Any spoilers on what that's going to be about?
No.
Keeping it secret. Okay, fair enough. I won't.
One of us has to, Ted.
Okay. Excellent. Well, are there any topics that we should cover? I guess, indexing has been kind of weird. So if you're out there having trouble getting Google to do the right thing with your page updates, you're not alone. There's been quite a bit of that. The bulk of what I've seen has been with rendered indexing. So simple indexing is just where you put content in HTML and Google does the right thing with it. With rendered indexing, Google needs to actually render the page to see the content you're presenting. And so if it's loaded by JavaScript or loaded by Tag Manager or loaded in iframes, then those things have been kind of invisible to Google as of late. And so that's been messing me up a lot. I believe, Clint, have you had trouble with like Schema? Was that where you were running into it?
That was just the Google Tag Manager. You mentioned that it runs on JavaScript, obviously. So when you employ Schema with Google Tag Manager, the structured data testing tool was no longer reading it. I'm going to wait until this kind of all settles out and see if that's actually remains the case. But that sucks if it is indeed that case. I guess it would kind of lead into my question. I don't know if anyone has any questions, but my question would be: are you thinking that this affects applications of cloud workers? Use air quotes, edge SEO. We're using cloud workers to modify pages, etc. Do SEO tests like the distilled, or what is it called, Search Pilot now, where they use JavaScript to change elements on the page to test SEO things.
Yeah, that's exactly where I got derailed, was Edge SEO. And yeah, it's been frustrating. I did today finally get a deployment. That weirdness that Lee and I had that we thought was the rollback was actually a regional propagation of index data. And so it hit Lee's region first, and now it's kind of everywhere. And but it's really cool to see it working, because that means there's a light at the end of the tunnel. The good news on all of this is that Google has to fix it or Tag Manager is dead. So, there's some pressure for Google to get this working again. The other interesting thing is that it kind of tells a story. There was the Google, product review update thingy where they were messing with all the product pages. And that was kind of the last big update. And then Google immediately came out and said, oh, the next update we're delaying, we're pushing it way back. And then it's kind of like there's been all this firefighting, and rendered indexing has been like pretty much offline. Little tidbits here and there, but definitely not business as usual. It's kind of telling a story that, something happened and Google's been scrambling to get things working again. So what do you think? You think it's related? You think they were fighting fires?
Honestly, I think they messed something up and they had the product review update. Then they started testing for core web vitals, realized that they screwed something up really, really bad. And now they're trying to fix it. And that's why the core web vitals thing got pushed off. That's what I think happened.
Yeah, I agree. What do you think, Kyle?
I don't know. Doesn't this feel like the same thing? This is always just for the last 2 years of our lives. It's been like this.
Well, I think so. With 4 days here where it worked and 4 days there where it worked. It's kind of a larger amount of I guess headache. I just don't get it. So we'll see. Though I'm happy that it looks like we're finally starting to come out of it a little. The Other interesting thing is a leak from 2017 came up again, which is that Googlebot uses an absurdly tall viewport. And I've been thinking about that cloaking episode ever since we did our episode on cloaking. And, absurdly tall viewport is another vector of fingerprinting Googlebot. So I was surprised that that's back in the limelight. So it's interesting, and I bring that up because Google I/O is about to happen too, and the Google I/O conference last year was amazing in terms of all of the technical leaks on how everything works and the implications on SEO. So I'm really excited that Google I/O is happening again. You know, it's it's going to be
Ted on that.
I really like that they're doing that. What was that, Clint?
Sometimes you're going in and out. Your audio is going in and out.
Oh yeah, sorry, I'm having some internet trouble.
Yeah. Stupid dial-up.
Yep. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what's in Google I/O. I looked at their webpage for it, and it looked like they had a bunch of stuff for Core Web Vitals queuing up. So that'll be interesting too, I suppose. Of course, the most interesting thing I've seen recently regarding the Core Web Vitals is that I've had really good luck tuning for Core Web Vitals simply by periodically changing WordPress themes. I've been able to get them to go from red to green based on theme choice. So the funny thing about that is that it may actually be the most cost-effective way to tune for Core Web Vitals. Instead of getting into the weeds on all the engineering diagnostics, try out a few themes and see if it goes green. And I suspect if Core Web Vitals ends up being a ranking factor, then all of the theme websites, so if you make these themes and sell them online, you should show a snapshot of your theme getting all green Core Web Vitals. That'll be a big selling point for your WordPress themes going forward. Have you had to do any Web Vitals tuning yet?
I did it for Digital Ear and all my Oxygen sites. It is what it is. I just make sure it's fast for the user, loading in 3 seconds, and otherwise I just leave the grades for the school kids and ignore the Web Vitals reports pretty much.
Yeah, one of the common problem areas I found with WordPress themes is if there's a loading phase where it shows the spinning loading icon, that is quite often a problem for Core Web Vitals. So if you're looking at themes or you have a website that's all in the red, the second I got rid of that loading phase out of the theme, it all cleared up for me. So I'm guessing part of it is some of that design architecture with those loading phases. So it won't be as easy as up and seeing how it's going. So another issue in SEO is that we've been trying to figure out indexing, and we have this idea that it might be possible to understand the time frames and indexing. And so one of the things we're trying to do is figure out at what point does Google visit a web page? At what point is it rendered into Google's system? And then after it's rendered, at what point does it become visible in search? And understanding these timeframes, because for update detection, figuring out when Google has an update rolling out, they so often slow down or disable indexing that it might actually be the best indicator. If we have a near real-time measurement of the timing metrics of indexing, that might actually be the best way to detect a Google update. And so we're starting to look into that. Any thoughts on detecting updates with index timing? Think chasing down a rabbit hole? What do you think, Kyle?
This is one of those areas I have absolutely no knowledge of. When you get into those things, I'm just like, sure. Like,
well,
yes.
I guess if I rephrase the question, do you think that it's a common pattern that Google mucks with index timing during updates?
Yeah, you can absolutely see that things shut down when an update is coming up, and that's a pretty standard. Seems very standard for them, and like it seems like the more lag time there is, the larger the update is. You know what I mean? That the more they hold things back, the larger a rollout is coming for sure. I'd be stunned to find out otherwise.
Yeah, we keep looking for these, unicorn metrics that are indicators of update activity. And, we found some good ones. We've had pretty good predictions in the past with them, but it might just get a whole lot easier. And so we're kind of looking at these update timings and trying to plot them over time and see if that's a better indicator. But of course, we have to build all new systems to be able to do that well. So, if there, are there any other topics? Because I'm all out of news. This might end up being a short episode. So, anything anybody wants to talk about or mention?
Oh, I have one thing. And this, I think I shared it with you, the article from Marie Haynes about the Google Spam AI.
I vaguely recollect that. Can you remind me?
Yeah, it was something, it's kind of like after, let's say, indexing had been requested, that everything was going through a sort of spam filter, that Google was recognizing certain spammy content and filtering it out so that it wouldn't end up getting visible on the index.
Yeah, and I think that's very plausible. Actually, it might even be more than just plausible. There may be some evidence that something like that is happening. And the reason I think that is that going all the way back to early 2000s, there's always been this pattern of, oh, well, fave icons are brand new. If I'm first to put a fave icon on my page, oh, lo and behold, I got a small ranking boost. And then 6 weeks later, it kind of goes away. And then, oh, iPhones are a new technology. Now they're these Apple Touch icons. I was the first to put them on my website and I saw a little boost. And 6 weeks later, the boost goes away. And then HTML5 comes out. So I pressure the company. I say, let's switch to HTML5. And lo and behold, we get 6 weeks of a boost. And then it goes away. And then HTTPS is a requirement. So we hurry up and do that first. And for 6 weeks, we get a boost and then it goes away. There's this pattern and it feels Bayesian. It feels like there's some sort of a classifier saying, how much does your web page look like our web spam training set? And it gives you a score. And when you do things that make you slightly different than what's in their training set, it behaves like a ranking factor. You're a hair less spammy. And then when all the web spam is doing it too, when they add their fave icons and upgrade to HTML5, then your spamminess score goes back to its baseline because they have it too. It's no longer a difference. And so that type of interaction and the data, it really smacks of some like basic AI training sets for web spamminess. Now, there's also been talk about an AI algorithm for spamminess that will weight factors. And all of those conversations sound a whole lot more like MC4. And MC4 is an algorithm that says if you're exploiting a minority of ranking factors, then just ignore those factors. And so the way you tune around it is you don't exploit a minority of factors, you exploit them all, and then you just rank well. And so, I'd argue that there's potentially, some data that supports both. Now, does it, prove it conclusively? No. But it's very suggestive that those two algorithms or algorithms very similar to those might be in play.
Cool. Thanks.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. There's a lot of history on it too. Have you ever had just weird stuff that boosted pages, Clint? Anything like just bizarre factors? You did something obscure and it worked and it doesn't make any sense?
Oh yeah, plenty of times. I think along those lines, Core Web Vitals is going to be the same way. For a while there, you're going to have these green scores. Everyone's going to see a little bit of benefit. Once it's all taken on, it's just going to be a wash again. So,
well, I'm wondering with Core Web Vitals what they're going to do about the GDPR pop-up problem, since it's highest Z layer content in the viewport. And it makes me wonder if you're doing pop-up marketing, maybe just saying GDPR and it will let you get around it. There's probably some black hat exploits in what they're setting up to handle Core Web Vitals that people haven't even considered yet. But yeah, that largest contentful paint part is looking for the highest altitude content layer. So the Z index, if you set that so that something's floating on top and it's in the main viewport, that becomes your main content. And I imagine that the world can't change fast enough to fix it. So Google's going to have to detect those GDPR pop-ups and, give them a pass and go to the next layer down. So that's why I wonder if saying, GDPRs or using that type of text in, like, say, an ad pop-up might be an exploit. That's where I think there's probably room for a lot of shenanigans. But, we'll see. The Black Cats haven't had a chance to really play with that yet.
When you mentioned Marie Haynes, I was reminded, because I've been looking at this, she was the winner of the Wix Lovers versus Haters competition in 2019, like people that love Wix versus people that hate Wix. I think that was, I need to go back and look at it again a little bit more, but I think it was just two teams against each other. And I think Marie Haynes on the Loves Wix team won. But I've been getting more into the SEO Hero one that they did in 2017. And there's a guy named Patrick Stocks who won. His site's beanseohero.com. I don't know. Oh, beanseohero.com. But I guess he was disqualified for redirects that were violated, and he was disqualified after he had, like, I guess, won. And there's this whole drama that's unfolding about how he had called out some other website, I think, that ended up winning, that was using some French PBN blog network. It's amazing. But this all came up just from a post from Dave in IMG about doing a Where Are They Now. So I'm very excited to do a little Where Are They Now on some of these competitions, and kind of talk about competitions in general. Do a little
I always ran into Patrick Stocks at like SMX. He was always in that white hat conference crowd.
Yeah, so it turns out he was doing like sneaky redirects. It claims that he wasn't. I don't know.
Well, he's an enterprise SEO. If I remember correctly, he was doing SEO for like IBM or something.
But if you want a fun kind of schizophrenic read, and the timeline is all interesting, and I'm still trying to sort it a bit, but BEAN SEO Hero, BEAN SEO Hero.com, it's still up. And that was the site that he used. That was the site that he won with, and then was disqualified with. And then it goes on, and he was talking about the top 3 winners all were doing things. I guess the guidelines require that you stay within Google's guidelines, and it was found that he was outside those guidelines, but he was pointing out that other people were as well. And
well, that's
the whole thing's great.
That's kind of dumb, Why have a ranking contest and then disqualify the people who rank the best,
Yeah.
If you're trying to learn how it works, it's like you're disqualifying very important information.
Yeah, and I'm thoroughly enjoying this walk down memory lane. And then, before we started recording, we were talking about that John Mueller posted that on the second Wix competition that SEO contests are useless, and you shouldn't participate in them or follow them because they don't follow real world advice. And we were talking about that's the silliest thing you could possibly say.
Yeah, and Google flags the winners as pure web spam, but I disagree. I find them to be the absolute most educational SEO content, blog posts ever authored. It's just that it's not obvious what their value is, and it's not obvious to who the intended audience is. But if you think the intended audience is people purchasing rhinoplasty services, well, you're mistaken. This content was clearly made for SEOs.
Yeah. The thing that you can see with these competitions is really nice is you can go back through the sites and see what they did. It's kind of the whole point of the whole thing, and see what techniques were done, what seemed to work and what didn't, in a competitive environment where people are, which is exactly what SEO is. It's a competitive environment where people are doing things to their sites to try to rank better in Google. And it gives you a short-term glimpse, like, into this window of, okay, these sites they have this same goal in mind. Now let's see how they approach it. And you can learn so much so quickly. Or in John's opinion, you can't.
Well, and he really took the wrong stance on the whole thing. I mean, it's a terrible stance for Google to take. Google should say, we love it. This is crowdsourcing testing for our search engineering team. We can look at the contest entries and figure out where we're doing a bad job, but they don't do that. They try to say that, contests have no value, have no merit, but, I don't know. It seems weird that they took the stance they did. They didn't have to. They could have gone a different direction.
Well, I think the largest concern is that they can see that if it gives lights into how the algorithm works.
Yeah.
When doing these things, you can figure out how the algorithm works, or portions of it, and that's probably their biggest fear.
Well, yeah. I mean, we all saw the power of the rhinoplasty Plano entry, where it really highlighted that Google wasn't reading your content for quality. That's the single biggest takeaway of it. And yeah, it was probably a big black eye for them. They were coasting on their reputation, even though their technology didn't live up to that reputation.
Yeah. But, yeah, if you're looking for a fun afternoon, check out beanseohero.com. It's fantastic. Actually, if you search like SEO Hero competition, several of the competition sites rank for that, and they're up. So you can actually still see them from 2017, which is fun.
But wait, they don't work in, a real context.
That's right. They don't work at all. That's why they're still there. The rhinoplasty plano site, I think, is still on page 1. I've checked a couple months ago. It was sitting on number 5 in Bing, which is great. I think it's slowly but surely working its way out of Bing, and another 10 years, it'll probably be finally off of page 1.
So Thane says GDPR pop-ups are awful for people who operate the computer slowly. Every effing website, worst law ever. Yeah, on my website, I didn't make it a pop-up. I just made it footer content because I don't think the law requires it to be an obstructive pop-up. But I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. My claim to fame was making it extremely sarcastic. My disclaimer text has gone viral like a dozen times. People will email it around and say, you have to check out this website's disclaimer. And for useless text that does nothing for everybody else, having it go viral 2-3 times a year is pretty fun. So I guess with that, we're at a half an hour and no real questions. So we'll call it a show, and we'll hope to have a better topic for next week. I know we have a few in the works. I've been busy coding, working on Cora 6 and other things. See Thane saying you might try a sarcastic version. There's no law about your disclaimers being sarcastic. So
yours says something like, all websites do this. Get over yourself, right?
Yeah, it kind of says, yeah, all websites do this. If you have a problem with it, please stop using the internet.
Yeah.
That's it in a nutshell. And it's true. Like, name one website that doesn't have log files. Name one website that doesn't use forms. Name one website that, doesn't have cookies. They all do it. Why are we doing this for something that they all do? It seems ridiculous.
Don't be an idiot.
Yep. So yeah, play around with it. There's no law that says your GDPR disclaimer can't be funny. Maybe run it past a comedian on Fiverr, and maybe it can go viral for you too.
Oh, it'd be so great would be to get like Gilbert Gottfried to read it out loud for you.
Oh yeah, video GDPR would be hilarious.
Look, don't be an idiot. That's my Gilbert Gottfried right there.
That would be awesome. I love it. Well, with that, thanks everyone. We'll try and have a better show next week, and we'll see you then.